Today on Riding with Marshall, you will see one of my all-time favorite bikes. So much so that I've owned two of the same model, just a few years apart. Okay, I didn't own this model, although Genia really did like the bike. When I bought the second one, I had gone to buy something bigger. After trying a few twin cams and feeling meh about them, I bought another Sportster to replace the previous one I had traded away. We will compare it with the Harley's makeover, the Sportster S. What did I love about the Harley Davidson XL1200C Sportster, C meaning custom? I owned a 2012 and a 2009 model, and both were absolutely gorgeous in red. They both were overchromed, which drew compliments at many gas stations. I loved how they were on the cutting edge of technology too. Well, maybe the way a museum locomotive might be. To give the bike some credit, at least it was fuel injected. Sportsters are accessible, meaning any rider can ride one, and that's the appeal. Most have forward pegs, but the 883s and the one I'm about to ride soon have mid pegs. Many Harley riders consider the Sportster a girl's bike, but to categorize it such is a big mistake, because they are way more fun to ride than a big bagger. They are a small bike though, so if you are of the typical American cruiser weight class, you'll avoid it because no one wants a bike that makes their ass look big. Not only were they very light and whippable compared to larger Harleys, you could ride two up rather comfortably with a sundowner seat. And I often rode with my lady, who was dieting and exercising too much at the time this was taken. The engine was an air-cooled paint shaker. I swear, you could mount a can of paint to it and it would come out perfectly shaken in 5 miles. They are rubber mounted after 2003, removing some of the vibration to the bike so you can actually see in your mirrors. Imagine that, a Harley where you can see in your mirrors. I say that flippantly, but there was a time when it was difficult to find a bike with working mirrors. The engine puts out 58.5 horsepower and 64 torques at 3,900 RPMs. That's a nice low torque right from the green light. But that 3,900 RPMs is right about where you will want to shift to the next gear, if you have any left. It's a 5-speed. Your numbers will vary considerably because no one buys an XL just to leave the pipes and air cleaner stock. Case in point, here is a Sportster for sale with Vance and Hines pipes. Let's go take it for a spin. Oh yes, I remember the condoms, hand condoms, no grip whatsoever. You have blinkers on that side and this side. This bike has mid controls instead of forward controls. Now that's cool. And let's see, gotta remember my Harley controls here. We're already on, just have to start it. Now, Sportsters don't start. They explode into life, especially when cold. This one was running already, so the explosion is not quite as dramatic. The violence at startup is part of the visceral fun. The XL1200C weighs about 600 pounds with gas and accessories. Sports bike riders place it in the too heavy, too slow category, but who asked them anyway? It is very light and maneuverable compared to other cruisers. The stock clip-on windshield is too short for most riders, but the dealer will be poised and ready to sell you the tall one, as well as a sundowner seat. The tall one's worth the money. Some of you might want an easy pull clutch assembly installed, as most Sportsters have a moderate to hard clutch pull. Yes, even the brand new ones, especially the new Iron 883s. A hard clutch pull is no big deal in normal riding, but if you get into some stop-and-go city traffic, your hand will probably fatigue. The XL1200 has a 4.5-gallon tank, and you want that. It's a good capacity to have when riding with larger bikes. Depending on where and how you ride, you'll get between 38 to 42 miles per gallon. That should give you a range of at least 150 miles before you start looking for a gas station. And for most motorcycles, that's mostly normal. Although an 883 gets better mileage, you'll be winding it out to keep up with your friends, and the smaller tank will have you stopping at stations more often, like every 80 miles. Buy the 1200 over an 883. You won't regret it. You'll rapidly grow out of an 883. The 5-speed gearbox is clunky, old school style, and my wife pointed out that it never really seems like I was in the right gear. That could be because there's a need to always be shifting gears, but that's the accepted nature of the beast. The thing to know about the older class of Sportster is that the suspension is just as ancient, with 2 rear non-adjustable shocks, giving you only a few inches of travel before thumping you in the ass. That means avoid those potholes. The Sportsters lean a little bit more than bigger baggers with floorboards though, and it makes owning one more fun. This clip from my older intro was shot on one of my Sporties. You might want to extend the mirrors though so you can see over your elbows. Do Harley riders even use their mirrors? Well, this guy does. Now let's look at the new Sportster S. I don't agree with the name. Although it is sporty, like a Ducati Diavel is sporty, it's not for everyone. Take away a few points for accessibility. It's not a cruiser or a bagger. No windshield, no luggage, and you will be leaning over it. The Sportster has been the longest running production model for Harley Davidson, starting in 1957 and never missing a year until recently. Europe cut them in 2020 for not meeting emission standards. So the new Sportster S with the Revolution Max 1250T engine was made. I'm just going to guess that the T stands for touring. I'm not sure. It's a similar water-cooled 60-degree V-twin engine to the Pan America, but with some differences. It's only 121 horsepower instead of 150, and it has a 12-to-1 compression ratio instead of Pan America's absurd 13-to-1, meaning it just might outlast the Pan America engine and not blow out. The engine has a different top end to give it more torque. Now let's take it for a ride. First, we have to figure out how to start it. Let's see if this ion rocket technician can figure it out.
You want to go first?
Steering takes some getting used to due to this front tire that's wide enough to share 2 zip codes. Maybe they're going after the Indian Scout. This bike is 100 pounds lighter than the traditional Sportster. It revs a lot higher, the gears are smooth shifting, and the clutch is light. The foot pegs seem to be too far forward to have me leaning over the handlebars. This bike is small for me, and I feel cramped. Honestly, it handles, performs, and sounds more like my Ducati Scrambler, but without all that messy ground clearance. In fact, with a ground clearance of 3.5 inches, it's nearly an inch closer to the ground than the old Sportster. And then there is the sound and feel. Let's compare the startup. So one of them sounds like a Harley, the other one sounds like a Ducati. As for feel, the first Sportster is all about feel. You feel that vibration everywhere, even with the rubber-mounted engine. There's no vibration in the new Sportster. Do you want it? Well, the kids might not. Anyway, they're apples and oranges. We have a Sportster and a Sportster S, and neither one of them are the same bike. So, looking at it, is this a Sportster? Well, it's a new Sportster. And by new, I mean it wasn't made for the heritage generation that I fall into.
Don't worry about other drivers. All you gotta have is skulls, 'cause that'll terrify them away from you.
I'm okay with that. You have to give the young people a reason to ride, and you have to give them something else that's not their grandpa's cruiser. Riders below 40 years old don't generally like chrome. I get it. But call it something different. Don't call it a Sportster. It really isn't. Now, Europeans are used to performance in their bikes, and this bike delivers, at least in straightaways. I would be interested in more ground clearance, but giving it such would raise the 30.1 seat height. How about make a Scrambler version? The price starts at $15,000, but unless you are buying it at a John Elway dealer or other very rare MSRP Harley dealer, I'll be surprised if they let you ride away for under $20,000. Now for that, I can buy 2 used XL1200Cs with all kinds of creature comforts installed. Like I said though, the Sportster S wasn't made for me, and I have to accept that. There are plenty of old Sportsters for sale, but if you want a small, lighter, 500 pounds light anyway, fast, water-cooled motorcycle, then the Sportster S might be for you, especially as an entryway into the Harley Davidson name. And hey, if you are steering that wide front tire through some curves, keep your chin up.